Good morning, John.
Morning.
We're in a little bit of a different location today. We're in Guard's offices here in Glasgow. And what have we got today? I see some finds here on the table.
Yes, later we're in sort of mid-May and we're finishing, really coming to the end of the excavation. So now we're moving on to the next phase of work, which is really trying to understand what we've found over the last 2 years. And as that process goes, it's going to take a bit of time, probably 2 years from start to finish. So we've got a lot of specialists working, including specialists from Guards and some of the universities we hope to employ. But what we've got thought today is actually show some of the strange objects that we're going to report on over the next 18 months or so. And it's sort of just give you that different feel, because we're not in the field, we're in the office. And for those who might follow archaeology, is only probably about half in the field and half in the office, because you have to write up the reports and that takes time. So what have we got today? Well, we thought we'd show you some of the oddities, some of the unique finds, because we've not really started the really in-depth analysis of the thousands of finds that we've actually uncovered. But just to give you a sort of clue, some of the nice oddities that we've found over the years, some of them might be familiar to the audience who've seen some of the vlogs early on. Now, to either side, you might see these two large bones. These are actually a unique find, really, in terms of Edinburgh, an archaeological find. They're the two parts of a fin of a sperm whale's fin, the right fin, and you can just see the massive size of this. So effectively, in reality, it's your sort of bones roughly just off the joint here, and you can just see they actually, although that's about half a metre, they actually weigh a very heavy and very dense bone, and both sort of joined together. So we've got these dated. So earlier they seem to date probably from the 18th, early 19th century, so really before industrial whaling, which Leith was actually famous for in the 20th century down in South Georgia and the Falkland Islands. And we think at this stage, though further work will prevail, that it was probably a beach whale. Now, some of the audience might know, and if you watch the reports, you often get lost male sperm whales going up the North Sea in migration, and it's possibly one of those that got lost in the Forth and died somewhere and has been butchered for its meat, and also, more importantly, for its oil, which is used in scientific instruments in that period. So we're going to do a lot more work with those. Now, we'll come on to this star object later on, but moving on in no particular order, but what we have here is something that might be familiar to certain of us, a certain age, including myself, is a range of milk bottles, actually in glass, not petro perhaps we do today, from a range of actually Edinburgh dairies. Now, we've got the St Cuthbert's Co-op, for those who are, which Sean Connery actually, I'm not saying delivered this milk bottle, but he actually worked for them in the 50s as a milk delivery. You can just see the name St Cuthbert's on that. Now that's a pint. Now we move down the size to a half pint, and this is from another Edinburgh dairy, E&D company, Edinburgh. So that's half a pint, and this is probably quite familiar to quite a lot of people. This is actually a third of a pint, which probably came from school children, because this is part of the school ration that was given to free every day to school children up until the mid to late 70s. So we move along to some of the sort of nice, was obviously one of the major parts of the project was excavation of the graveyard. And we just move on to some of these plates from Coffin Plates, highly decorated. There were actually three of the same design found together, one on top of each other. Now, we got very few grave finds from the medieval side, but these actually date to probably 18th and early first half of the 19th century. Highly decorated, they've been on top or of a coffin, probably, and you've got two probably cherubs or angels on the top and a nice cartouche in the middle, all the same design. The holes you can see there would be where they've been fixed on to a coffin. Interesting they're found together. It's actually why they're found like that, whether they're actually just thrown in there or came from, they don't seem to be related to a coffin itself when they were found. So maybe from a disturbed coffin and put in behind, and were found just behind the graveyard wall when we took them down. So a really nice bit of social history here, and we'll actually look about the design, and it'll tell us about burial practice of that period, and there's a lot of research done on that down south. Now, sort of moving on to closer to you, Elena, what we have in front of me are two of the cannibals we found. I think the one on the left was actually found within the graveyard itself, and it possibly relates to the siege workers identified in one of the earlier vlogs. And we got a smaller one, obviously, to my right. We've got a whole range of several cannibals, and so we'll look at obviously these ones are made of iron, but the important thing is what's the size of the cannon they were fired from. It'll tell a lot about the weaponry at the time. So it's quite an important piece of research we'll develop out of that, and maybe linking into the siege of Leith as well, and certain engagements. Now, we sort of look to the final. I say I'll come to this at the very end. But obviously, these are the finds, and we actually have part of the process of archaeology is recording what we find in the ground in detail. So we do planning, we do surveys, photogrammetry, etc. And then we have to write that up. And first of all, in a technical report, we call it a data structure report, but then that forms the basis of what we call the publication reports, which we hope to publish to the general public. And as part of that, obviously, archaeology is destruction by record, so how do we record it? Well, I told you, photograph it and describe it. But one of the things we actually do is that in this case, we draw the finds, the remains themselves. Now, this is one of the star discoveries of the excavation and very pertinent to the tram works. This is the drawing undertaken by Gemma of the pill rig wheels, part of the pill rig muddle as we call them. These are drove the Edinburgh's original cable tram network, which existed from the 1890s through to 1924. And just to give you a rough scale, this is drawn to 1 to 20, so they're all scaled up, hand drawn. It was a fantastic, almost piece of artwork in itself, right? But we've got two metal wheels here, and effectively they're about 3 metres from there to there and across. So just give you a sort of scale. So that's a really, so that'll be, this is the initial pencil drawing. It'll then be scanned and finessed into the final product. And then, as I say, we'll come on to this. What is an actually miraculous discovery? This bottle. Now, I don't know if you can. It is actually, you can just see, full of liquid. Still got its cork in it. We can just move around to this dummy on it. Coloured water, which will be important in a minute. And at the bottom, which I don't really want to lift it up, maybe you can see there, are the initials JW. Now, the clue is in the two clues about what it is. It's the shape, very square and tall, and JW. This, believe it or not, was discovered by machine within rubble from the backfilled basement or cellar of a pub on Constitution Street, just south of Constitution Street graveyard of the day. How it survived, God only knows. It's perfectly intact, still got a bottom. This should be in fragments, and it's really interesting because it's actually a dummy bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey. Hence why it says coloured water and not actual whiskey. Why it probably survives with stuff inside it. But this would have been on the pub shelf just as a advertisement. Obviously the labels have gone around it, which is a shame, but a very interesting and unique find, purely because how it survived, being demolished, full of rubble, and still intact with its bottle contents. We will not sample the liquid inside, though certainly it's probably not very drinkable, he says there, but we'll have to think about proper conservation measures because we don't want it to dry out, so there's going to be a whole load of conservation measures done on that, and I think that's it. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, John.
Pleasure.
Okay.